I am driving along the south shore of the island of Maui, in the Hawaiian archipelago. What appears to be thousands of acres of freshly overturned clods of soil is in fact crystallized and oxidized iron ore. Volcanic basalt. And it is over 200 years old. If I was to drive on it, or walk on it, it would shred the rubber of my shoes or tires, without suffering any major deformity itself. It can be seen in a swath which extends up the slope of this mountainside. The mountain is called Haleakala. It is an active volcano. And it soars over 10,000 feet above the surrounding ocean. Formerly accessible only by four-wheel drive, there is now an improved access road for a visitor to reach the place where the ship captain, La Perouse, became the first European to set foot on the island of Maui. The place where he set foot was here, at the bay that today is named after him. In 1790, America had just concluded its War of Independence, and France was suffering its own revolution. One Frenchman described it by saying, "Nous marchons sur un volcan." Translated, it means, we are walking over a volcano. Anyone visiting this place certainly feels like a Frenchman from that time. And that the ground beneath your feet is mysterious and uncertain. If that white beach looks welcoming, it isn't. It isn't sand. It is white coral, and it is almost as sharp as the black lava rocks found all around it. It is a wonder that plants find root at all in this rocky ground. You have to wonder that they likely draw most of their nutrition from the air, or from the ocean algae, there being no soil here at all, except for what rock happens to be pulverized by wind and waves, into fine enough dust. There are some patches where the rock has been worn into almost what can be thought of as a path. But without strong shoes here, you would not be able to call it a path, practically speaking. The hiker has the feeling that they are stepping onto a million shattered china plates and cups. And there is the danger of twisting an ankle with each step, as the pieces of rock shift and wobble beneath your feet. You have to think that if you did go down, your hands and face would need to take whatever damage those myriad sharp edges would impress upon them. A little further on, and there is some sand, as well as dirt. Organic material from the leaves and wood that grow and then fall here. And the sand being the natural deposit of microscopic crustaceans that can accumulate over 200 odd years. There are 4 miles or so of paths to walk on, which present to the hiker a series of small bays. Surrounded by such untouched elements, one has the impression of seeing, hearing, and feeling the exact same things that the first Frenchman did when he came here in 1790. In some places, time does not pass, but rather, it ebbs to and fro, as a wave. In the 1700s, Captain James Cook made 3 Pacific voyages. The first voyage, in 1768, had as its goal to be present in Tahiti during a solar transit of the planet Venus, which was intended to provide astronomical data to be used to calculate Earth's distance to the Sun. Unfortunately, the data which was obtained did not settle this scientific question. But the new continent of Australia had been discovered on this voyage, and it was charted and put on the maps of the world, along with New Zealand and many new Polynesian islands. This voyage also circumnavigated the world from east to west. On his second voyage, Captain Cook circumnavigated the world in the opposite direction, from west to east. This made him the first person to do so in both directions. This voyage was ironically one of non-discovery. Namely, that they did not discover any large South Pacific continent that they expected to find as a balance to Asia in the north. Cook did however become the first person to cross the Antarctic Circle, traveling further south than anyone ever had before, and being the first person to see Antarctica's ice shelf. In the third Pacific voyage, in 1776, Captain Cook did not return home, perishing at the hands of the Hawaiians after discovering and charting their islands. The expedition was concluded by Cook's second-in-command, Lieutenant King, who brought news of this last piece of land in the world to the kingdoms of Europe. One of the other officers on the third voyage was Lieutenant Bligh, who would later suffer mutiny by his own men while in Tahiti, and also George Vancouver, who would return to Hawaii several years later, and exchange gifts with Hawaii's King Kamehameha. In all, these voyages were the zenith of British naval power. The time when Britannia really did rule the waves. Cook had secret directions to follow on his last voyage. One of them, which has been unclassified, was to attempt to find a northwest passage around Canada from the Atlantic. But this attempt also did not achieve the anticipated goal. Cook may have had other secret instructions at the time of his death. But whatever unpublished discoveries he might have made, he is quoted in his journals as saying, "Our understanding of the world in which we live must be fundamentally reassessed." Cook was speaking of geography. He records, and then complains, about large discrepancies between his calculated, and then his actual longitude, in the far southern latitudes. These discrepancies occur, even in the modern day, and all maritime charts are published and used as flat charts. Globes are practically used only for illustrative purposes, in the classrooms of youth. Cook also relates how he could cross the North Atlantic in 2 weeks, but at the same southern latitude, with gale winds driving him, he took months for the same purported distance. Purported, that is, on differences in longitude. These are puzzles that Cook left for posterity to untangle. It makes the visitor who comes here wonder whether the majesty and grandeur he sees all around comes from within him, or whether he comes from it. And soon the visitor feels the call to return to the comforts of home, knowing that the elements will not rest, but will tend to themselves. They will be here, hundreds of years from now, to put forth the same display for the next visitors.